PSG have reportedly entered the race for Malo Gusto, and could it be likely that we're literally going to get £75 million for him? Xabi Alonso has told Chelsea that he likes Martin Zubamendi of Arsenal. The bid for incoming left-back Pep Chavarria has been revealed, and it looks like an absolute bargain. Pedro Neto continues to be linked to Man City, and Alex Crook tells us how much we want for him. Tosin Adarabioyo could be on his way out of the club, and Crystal Palace want to do a loan move for Axel Disasi with an obligation to buy not completely dissimilar from what we're doing with Alejandro Garnacho to Aston Villa. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And I've got a little bit of catching up to do because I only got my one video out yesterday, but we've got loads of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. Transfer News Live posted this today via the Sun Football. Paris Saint-Germain are considering a move for Malo Gusto. Chelsea have slapped a £75 million price tag on the French right back, while Manchester City also remain in the race for his signature. So this is fantastic news, because 75 mil for Malo Gusto felt kind of wild when it seemed like Man City were the only people that were interested in him, especially the only people with money, right? But Paris Saint-Germain entering the race for his signature as well, and them being quite as affluent as they are, starts to make it feel like 75 mil for Malo Gusto might be a real possibility. Look, I still think the money seems absolutely crazy, man, but this window has been mental. In a world where Elliot Anderson cost 116 mil, Tonali goes for 100 mil, what's his name? The guy from Newcastle, Anthony Gordon, goes to Barcelona for 70 mil. We buy Morgan Rogers for 117 mil. Nicholas Jackson's worth 65. 75 for Malo Gusto all of a sudden starts to seem kind of reasonable. And look, if there's any other club that can afford 75 mil, it's probably Paris Saint-Germain, isn't it? And it's an interesting one because, you know, Paris Saint-Germain are 2 times Champions League winners, and if Malo Gusto is now somehow being presented with the opportunity of Manchester City or 2-time Champions League champions of the last 2 years, Paris Saint-Germain, absolutely phenomenal news, especially for a player that it looks like we're not exactly really desperate to hang on to at the same time either. Look, evidently, what this interest and what these bids may or may not be telling you is that Malo Gusto is a highly rated player one way or the other. I think from the Chelsea perspective, we've seen him be underwhelming, but we've seen him be used in so many different positions and stuff. But at the end of the day, if these guys are up for slamming down 75 mil for him, then that is only going to be helpful to us, isn't it? We've already made 125 mil, 150 mil plus now with Trevor Chalobah going to Como. That would take us over 200 mil, and we've still got loads of players to sell. So look, I'm kind of here for it, man. I'm kind of here for it. I really like the look of Marco Palestra. I understand, like, it's difficult because all of a sudden, then if you feel a bit thin on the ground in terms of right back, don't you? Because Reece James can play the right back, midfielder, right centre back sort of thing, but Malo Gusto is capable athletically of kind of getting up and down that byline as well as Marco Palestra is. So it wouldn't be immediately evident who would be the backup, I guess, to Marco Palestra to play that same kind of position if we were to sell Malo Gusto. But this market's been wild, so, you know, there's still talk about us going in for more players. Obviously, we've got loads to shift out at the moment. But if we were to sell Malo Gusto, is there someone in the squad to promote to be that backup to Marco Palestra? Do we do a weird thing like convert Jamie Gittins to that right wing back side or something like that? Or do we go in for someone else? Let me know what you think in the comments. And guys, if you've made it this far into today's episode of the Stamford Sync, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Well, I'm sorry if my voice sounds a bit hoarse today. I've just finished recording tomorrow's episode of the Talking Chelsea podcast with Jay, so I've been talking about football for 2 hours already, but let's carry on. Absolutely wild one. This Transfer News Live posted this via the Cy Phillips Sports Substack. Xabi Alonso has told Chelsea he wants to sign Arsenal midfielder Martin Zubamendi this summer. Alonso has informed Chelsea that Zubamendi is a player he likes, but there is no indication the club are currently pursuing a deal. Chelsea have admired Zubamendi for some time, while Arsenal are unlikely to consider his sale after his impressive debut season. So I'm not going to get too wrapped up in the fact that Xabi Alonso is interested in Martin Zubamendi, right? Because, look, I think it's unlikely after Arsenal winning the Premier League, and he scored that really good goal against us as well. He was a big part of their Premier League win last season. He did have an impressive debut season. I think it's unlikely that we're going to go in for him, right? Unless there's some sort of swap deal to do with Enzo Fernandez, because Arsenal have been credited with keeping an eye on his situation throughout the window. But I think it's unlikely. What I do think is important about this, though, is not the link to the player itself. It's the fact that this is another deep-lying player, another deep-lying distributor, another profile of player that we don't really have much of in the squad at the moment. And Xabi Alonso has spoken to Chelsea about being interested in him, right? So look, like I say, it's not about, look, we're going in for Martin Zubamendi. It's about the fact that we are still talking about these high-profile centre midfielders. You know, the Alex Scott bid was knocked back. Adam Wharton has gone quiet, weirdly, but no one else is talking about buying him either. And that still feels like it's a possibility. And Martin Zubamendi just tells you that Xabi Alonso doesn't think we have the first teamer to partner Moises Caicedo in our squad at the moment. And it's just evident. It's evident from what we've been seeing in pre-season so far. You know, Mardi Nicole Jazuli has been doing a phenomenal job, but he's 16 years old. Dario Esugo and Romeo Lavia are flattering to deceive at the moment, unfortunately, for the most part. Valentin Barco looks like a good, versatile player, but he's not really that profile either, right? That kind of like less mobile, but like I say, that deep-lying distributor. And that's another kind of thing that Zubamendi is. He's a really tidy passer. He's not a guy that's bombing forward all the time to try and score goals like Enzo Fernandez is. And look, with Enzo Fernandez, that, you know, it's still all up in the air about him. But surely, with the situation that we're in and the cards that we hold vis-a-vis Enzo Fernandez, if Xabi Alonso thought Enzo Fernandez was the answer to that problem, then these links still wouldn't be happening, would they? So, guys, let me know what you think about this. Two things. A, Martin Zubamendi himself. Look, you know, it's unlikely that we're going to get him from Arsenal after they've just won the league, and he was a reasonably important part of making that happen. But they have just brought Bruno Guimaraes, which I guess changes things a little bit when you think about it, because you've got to think now their holding pair is probably going to be Declan Rice and Guimaraes, but maybe maybe they've gone in for that because of Declan Rice's kind of fitness issues that he's been having recently, we saw throughout the World Cup. So, would you be interested in a midfield, in Martin Zubamendi in particular, and what do you think about us still being linked with these deep-line midfielders? It feels like we're going to have to start shipping out midfielders at some point, doesn't it? Because Xabi Alonso clearly wants another deep line distributor to come into the squad, and one of first team quality. Next up, we're going to talk about Pep Chavarria. Finally, it's not announced yet, but we're close to the end of it, and there is good news about the price. Pice posted this via Fabrizio Romano. New Chelsea bid for Chavarria is 16.2 mil and add-ons. Here we go, could come within the next hours or even minutes. Player was wanted by Alonso. So that was from last night, so that didn't happen. But we could be seeing it today. It could be coming in very soon. The phenomenal news here is 16.2 million plus add-ons. That's excellent. At the end of the day, like the whole conversation for the last month or 3 weeks has been they want 40 mil for him, and it's like, no way, man, absolutely not. So props to Chelsea here for negotiating with Rayo Vallecano, and it looks like it's been tedious by the sounds of it. But if the bid that has been accepted is 16.2 million plus add-ons, and that might be up to about 6 million in add-ons, because I've seen floating around 22 mil is the whole price, but 16 mil on, right now on that's phenomenal for a player that comes in, adds experience and gets into the first team and is wanted by Xabi Alonso. What I'm starting to think about these experienced players is, we spent 117 mil on Morgan Rogers. We spent 50 mil on Marco Palestra. So that's nearly 170 mil on two players that fit the Blue Co model, right? I'm starting to feel like Xabi Alonso has been given like an auxiliary budget for experience, and we've got Jordan Henderson on a free. The noise about Danny Welbeck is that it's supposedly 5 mil. Pep Chavarria is only cost, so on Pep Chavarria, Danny Welbeck and Jordan Henderson, we're looking at just over 20 million for this season for 3 players that instantly upgrade the squad in one way or another. So I've got this feeling that Xabi Alonso has been given a very small budget in order to get these players over the line, which is why we've probably been so keen to negotiate and get these deals done, because they're players that he wants in the squad. And Blue Co have probably still got looser purse strings for the big signings, the likes of Morgan Rogers, Marco Palestra. Maybe if we go in for an Adam Wharton or an Alex Scott, we've already had the 64 mil bid knocked back for Alex Scott, for instance. Maybe the purse strings are a little bit looser with those because they fit the model. But either way, 16 mil for Chavarria, if we can get him in, is fantastic news. Really, really good signing. And look, it's a shame that we haven't just got it over the line. But at the end of the day, if this was the budget that was allocated for experienced players and Xabi Alonso really wanted this player, then ultimately it's a good thing that we took the time to get it done. Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Simon Johnson Sport pertaining to Pep Chavarria. Pep Chavarria is not only seen as someone that can feature in the team, but an individual that can help mentor Yoro Hato as well as Landon Emanalo. So we're setting up a succession plan, essentially, which is really good because we're getting experience in and around the pitch to help improve the players that we've already got in that position, right? We've got Danny Welbeck up there who may be able to help out João Pedro in some respects, but for the likes of Dastan Sapaya, for instance, having a Danny Welbeck around is going to be phenomenal. Jordan Henderson in the midfield to mentor the likes of Moises Caicedo and whoever else we bring in for that position. The likes of Pep Chavarría to come in, and there is some word on the street, that's the favourite one at the moment, isn't it? Word on the street. Is that supposedly if we do end up selling all of these centre-backs, which we're going to get into in a minute, we would like to go in for another John Stones style player of that kind of age and experience for the centre-back as well. So, love this. Pep Chavarria to Chelsea, looks like it's going to be soon. Lots and lots and lots of signings coming in, which is a little bit concerning in itself, but ultimately undeniable proof that Xabi Alonso is being back to the nines. Right, next up, Pedro Neto. Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Fabrizio Romano. Pedro Neto is appreciated by Enzo Maresca. He's considered an opportunity and well liked. He's not on the list of exits at Chelsea and still part of the project with Alonso. Depends if Chelsea get important proposal. I think it's telling that Pedro Neto didn't get any game time yesterday in the Juventus game, right? Like none. Do you know what I mean? It was literally Tosin got game time. Not a different position, obviously, but at the same time, game time yesterday on the right-hand side was given to Esteval Willian and Giovanni Kenda. Kenda looks to be closer to the profile of Pedro Neto, actually, than Esteval Willian does. So, look, we're seeing, these links for Pedro Neto have been floating around for a while, and it's starting to feel genuine, to be completely honest. More genuine than the Enzo Fernandez one did. There still feels like there could be something in for Malo Gusto as well. Maybe if we sell the multiple players, there's like a discount or a deal to be done or whatever. But either way, it looks like Pedro Neto to Enzo Maresca's Man City is not going away. What it seems to be tied to is Man City selling Savinho to Tottenham as well. Because if Tottenham can't get Savinho from City, then Pedro Neto is their kind of fullback player. But obviously it makes sense that City are interested in getting Pedro Neto because obviously Maresca knows the player already, the kind of player that he wants in his team. And evidently he's not as fussed about Savinho, who I guess is a bit more of a flair player, where Pedro Neto is a bit more of a robust workhorse. So Chelsea Dodgers also posted this via Alex Crook. I think Chelsea would demand a fee in the region of £70 million for Pedro Neto. So look, man, in this video alone, we're talking about 70 mil for Pedro Neto and 75 mil for Malo Gusto. £145 million for these two players. Absolutely wild, man. Like I say, that takes us up pretty much to 300 mil sales for the season, and like I say, we've still got a lot more to clear out at the moment. Look, I like Pedro Neto, and I think he would be a good player to have around the squad because he is now one of the experienced players as well, but we've got a lot of players that can play that position. Left-footed right wingers, we are inundated with left-footed right wingers at the moment, and I think from a Chelsea fan perspective, we've all seen him be quite frustrating from time to time as well, and I think that Xabi Alonso is not, you can see it in, he's playing Esteval out there. Giovanni Kenda, albeit similar profile, looks to be a bit more creative and a bit more flary than Pedro Neto is as well. You've got Cole Palmer that can play out there. We've got loads of players for that side now. And what we don't, yes, I know the thing is like, we can play on the left as well. Again, it's like putting a player there because he's the best option out of the guys that you've got rather than getting the guy that you need. And with the likes of Morgan Rogers coming in already, like, he's just not going to get that much game time there, is he? So yeah, I see Pedro Neto going out. 70 mil would be absolutely phenomenal. Let me know what you think in the comments. Right, next up, Chelsea Dodgers posted this. This is a big one via Fabrizio Romano and PYS. There is movement around Tosin Adarabioyo. He's had a lot of interest. That was a bit of a bomber for me because I just expected him to stay, to be completely honest. Like, I was not, but the truth is, like, he's looked pretty bad in pre-season, hasn't he? Like, he doesn't look like he's improved, even with having spent all of this time in the last 3 weeks training with Xabi Alonso. He kind of looks like the same player under Xabi Alonso that he looked like under Liam Rossini and that he looked like under Enzo Maresca. No clubs have been named as of yet, but I get it, man. The thing is, we got him for a free, so we're not going to be asking much. 10, 15 mil, 20, an absolute push, but maybe not even that. And you make more profit on Tosin Adarabioyo than you do from selling Axel Disasi and Benoit Badiashile combined. Maybe not quite that much, but a good chunk of change comes in for getting rid of a player that isn't going to have much resale value the further on he gets because he's nearly 29 years old now. He's not good enough to be in the first team. It's arguable whether he's even good enough to be a rotation player, and if Xabi Alonso, as I mentioned earlier, wants to add a different kind of experienced player into the team, right? Well, and this is the thing, like with Tosin, he's played for us. We know what he can give. And he didn't have winning credentials or title experience or anything like that. Or even just he was okay for Fulham, but that was in and around it really, wasn't it? So really interesting to see that Tosin might be up for sale as well, because that means that we could literally see the end of Axel Disasi, Benoit Badiashile and Tosin Adarabioyo all in the same window. Let me know what you think. Right, sticking with centre-backs, we're going to talk about Axel Disasi. Chelsea Dodgers posted this yesterday via Fabrice Hawkins. Just in, Crystal Palace have submitted a loan offer including an obligation to buy for Axel Disasi. Negotiations between Palace and Chelsea are ongoing. So, this is the same kind of deal that we've done for Garnacho with Aston Villa, right? So, we won't see any money for him right now. But if we're going to do a deal like this, it's going to be because, as it is with Aston Villa, the obligation is easy to meet. This, whether this deal gets accepted or not, because I know Axel Disasi is quite keen to get back into Europe. But at the same time, if if European clubs aren't looking to pay the money we want, and his only other option is West Ham, then he'll go to Crystal Palace, won't he? And the obligation, like I say, will be easy enough. It'll be make 10 appearances or whatever it is in order to get him a permanent, and he can consider his future down the line, but just kind of get away from his Chelsea nightmare. And it has been a nightmare for him one way or the other. So interesting one. And, when you think about maybe this is one of the reasons why we're considering selling Tosin as well, because all of a sudden now you see zero for Axel Disasi in this window, and if we still need to make a little bit of money, then selling Tosin makes sense, doesn't it? For instance, I think the offer for Benoit Badiashile from Napoli is about a loan as well. So look, this is the summer of loans with obligations. Do you know what I mean? That seems to be the way. And it makes sense for these kind of players. When it's the players that, if, for instance, we've talked about Pedro Neto and Malo Gusto being worth a combined 145 mil already. If we manage to shift Enzo Fernandez, that's going to be 100 mil plus as well. If we get Tosin Adarabioyo out, that is pure profit of anywhere between 10 to 20 mil. So, there's no point in playing hardball with these kind of players that you're going to make peanuts on at the end of the day, if we can make sure that they are all going out by the end of next season, or the start of next season, and we can have just a little bit added to the kitty, between Benoit Badiashile, Axel Disasi and Garnacho, what the profit would probably be like somewhere between 20 and 30 mil for all three of them combined at the end of the day. So, that gives you like just a little buffer at the start of next season. Hopefully when we're back into Europe as well, which would be good because obviously we always get in trouble with UEFA. So what the question is about this is, because we're being so creative with our loans at the moment, that's 2 to the Premier League already with, obviously Alejandro Garnacho to Aston Villa and Axel Disasi to Crystal Palace. It begs the question, how many loans can we do in the Premier League at the same time? I asked this question in a video the other day, and one of my commenters was nice enough to put a very robust description of the Premier League loan rules in. This was given to me by Mr. Nice Guy, who's a regular commenter, and we see him quite a lot over on the Talking Chelsea podcast as well. Absolute legend, really appreciate this. He said, you can loan out a maximum of 4 players. You can take in a maximum of 2 players on loan. You can only loan out 1 goalkeeper. You cannot loan more than 1 player to a specific club. You cannot loan a player within the same window they were acquired. These are the domestic club-to-club rules within the Premier League. Okay, so where does this leave us, basically? So part 1, you can loan out a maximum of 4 players within the Premier League. So at the moment, it's Alejandro Garnacho and potentially Axel Disasi. That would still leave us with spots for Mamadou Sarr, who they've said they've been interested, that they want to try and get a Premier League loan as well, and potentially like a Josh Achiampong, something like that. We've talked about that a bit recently. Go and check out my winners and losers, which is basically my match review from yesterday's game if you're interested in that. You can only take in a maximum of 2 players on loan. So we haven't got anyone in on loan, and I hope we don't. Last time we did that, it was Facundo Buonanotte. I always find it really bizarre when Chelsea get players in on loan, because you would think for a club of our stature it's not the sort of thing that we should need to do, but lo and behold, it happens sometimes. You can only loan out 1 goalkeeper to a Premier League club. So Philip Jorgensen's gone to Strasbourg. We've got Robert Sanchez and Mike Penders at the moment, and I imagine if either of those got loaned, it probably wouldn't be to a Premier League club anyway. And that leaves us with Gabriel Slonina and Teddy Sharman-Lowe. Maybe Slonina gets a Premier League loan, but I just get a feeling that would probably be a European one as well. But either way, at the moment, no goalkeepers out in the Premier League, so that's fine. You cannot loan more than 1 player to a specific club. So why that's interesting is because we've already loaned Alejandro Garnacho to Aston Villa. That means that the Nicholas Jackson deal, which looks like it still is the one that's maybe on, that would have to be a sale. I've mentioned my little tinfoil hat conspiracy about that recently. The day we signed Morgan Rogers was exactly 45 days before September the 1st, which means that it is possible for Aston Villa to purchase Nicholas Jackson on transfer deadline day and for it to be outside of that 45-day cut-off, so they won't lose 65 mil of the profit off of the Morgan Rogers deal, and they'll be able to just amortise Nicholas Jackson 65 million over the course of his contract up to 5 years, so that would obviously work for them. So yeah, basically, and again, if we do loan Axel Disasi to Crystal Palace, that means that that's not an option for Mamadou Sarr or Josh Achampong or someone like that either. You cannot loan a player within the same window that they were acquired. So I think that means if we were to buy... I think that means if you buy a Premier League player and you can't loan them out to a Premier League club the same window they were acquired. I'm not sure about that one, actually. I feel like that one might have happened at some point. That can't be the rules internationally because we were talking about buying Alay Begovic and loaning him back to Bayer Leverkusen or to Italy or something. Do you know what I mean? So I assume that means you can't buy a player. So we couldn't go out and buy a young player from the Premier League and then instantly loaning out to another Premier League club, I assume. And yeah, so those are the domestic rules with about club to club loan moves in the Premier League, which, like I say, means that yes, okay, we can loan 2 more players after this, one of which could be Mamadou Sarr, the other of which could be Josh Achiampong, but then we wouldn't be allowed to loan any more players to Premier League clubs. So guys, I'm going to start wrapping it up there, but I want to know what you think about everything that we've talked about today. Malo Gusto attracting interest from PSG as well as Man City. Could we actually get 75 mil for him? That's absolutely wild. Xabi Alonso has mentioned that he's interested in Martin Zubamendi of Arsenal. I don't necessarily think that's very likely. I think they would ask for an extortionate amount of money for him. But either way, I do think it's interesting that we are still seeing that Xabi Alonso is identifying a very different type of midfielder to be the partner for Moises Caicedo than the types that we've already got. Pep Chavarría looks like it's close, and we've got it for an absolute freaking steal. 16 mil on the books right now for Pep Chavarría feels like a great deal. Pedro Neto to City seems to be gathering pace, and again, £70 million we want for him. So we'll have to keep an eye on whether Savinho goes to Tottenham, because that seems to be the trigger that will make City put the bid in for Pedro Neto. Uncle Tosin Adarabioyo could be on his way out. There is no links with clubs yet, but Fabrizio Romano has said that he thinks he might be moving on. And Axel Disasi's offer from Crystal Palace was in fact another loan with an obligation to buy, and that makes sense and kind of keeps us all above board with the Premier League loan rules. Nice one, guys. Thanks very much for sticking around until the end of the video. If you did, I will catch up with you all very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.